So, without any further ado, we know why you're here. You want to see Samvia do some hair. So, please, in the chat, let's give a big, warm welcome, big, warm Christmas welcome to Samvia.
What's up, Andrew Carruthers? Hey, buddy, it's so good to see you, man. It seems like I haven't seen you in a while, so
I know,
hope
it
you are
seems like
well.
each time that you're on, I don't get to host, but I'm here today, so I'm going to bug you.
Well, happy holidays to you, my friend, and I look forward to today. So let's get right in today. What I want to talk about today, guys, is I want to talk about what's coming, what's happening. Call it whatever you want. Trends. I happen to call it hair fashion projections. It's just something I like calling it. It's basically about let's look into what's going to be happening. What are going to be some requests that you're going to be facing in the salon? And first of all, I want to give you my disclaimer. What I'm about to share with you is my feelings in terms of the brand Sanvia, in terms of what we feel is going to be happening moving forward. I'm not going to say that this is going to be exact. I'm just going to give you our opinions and our thoughts and our flavor and our attitude in terms of where we're moving and what direction we're going to move. And it's going to be all about hair. So I want to go back and I want to revisit some things first. First of all, I want you to share right now. So I want you to get on there. If you're on Facebook, I want you to send it to your friends. Please share. The class is happening right now. Get these people to jump on. I guarantee you're going to walk away with some information you can take back to salon and immediately start using. Also, I want you to ask questions. If you're on the chat, you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Andrew's going to be there in the back, making sure that I don't miss anything. Feel free to take some photos. Take some photos of the screenshots of what you're going to see. I'm going to sketch everything out. I notice I've got Texas, I've got Maryland, I've got Pennsylvania on board. Who else is on board? Where are you coming from? Looks like I've got quite a few people there. So let's talk. First of all, there's a couple things I'm going to go to the flip chart, and I suggest once again take notes. Let's talk about a few things. What are some shapes that have really been happening for us? So first of all, one of the biggest things that we've happened to see is what we refer to as shags. Shags have been really big in terms of what we're doing now. Shags. What is a shag? A shag is something that's extremely layered. I think if you think of someone, let me give you a very past muse, if you will, that would be Jane Fonda. If you're not familiar who Jane Fonda is, Google Jane Fonda, but she's a great one to look at. Joan Jett would be another one. That's a little bit more of a shorter version. But shags, they're nothing new. It's just something that made its way back. And I want you to think about this. Hair fashion is just like fashion itself. Everything comes back in a repetitive form, but it doesn't repeat itself to be exact, as you're going to see what I'm going to do today with a cut. It's really interesting how things come back, but they're not exactly what it was. Everybody might say, well, a shag is back. But it's the way that we cut the shag that made it a little bit more progressive, made it a little bit more fresh, made it a little bit more now. It wasn't exactly what we were doing back then. Also, I want you to take into consideration that happened for a reason, because people were letting their hair grow out. And when they wanted to cut it, they liked the length, they started layering their hair. Layers became something really big. So this is something that started to happen. With shags, you had layers. Layers really became popular. And that's what made the shag start to happen. So it's about the idea of fashion is a repetition of the old into the new. Everything repeats itself, but it comes back a little bit differently. So keep that in mind as we're working today and as we're talking about this. Now with shags, what happened with shags? We went into layers and then something came out and it was called a wolf. There was a wolf cut that made it a little bit more progressive. And what we meant by a wolf, the volume shifted, my friends. Instead of the volume moving back, that would have been too dated. The volume started to do this. It's just started from the high point of the lower back, high point of the crown. The volume just started to shift. So we were still giving our guests, our clients, a volume, but the volume was just a natural visual change in terms of how they started to see it. It became much more like what we were doing maybe in the 50s with this set called an artichoke. And it was basically, or an Italian set was basically what it was. But the volume would move forward. That's what it was doing. So that made its way back. In shifting it, the volume moved forward and is extremely layered. Now from a wolf, things started to happen. There's another thing that started to happen, and that was we got into this whole thing, and I'll never forget when I called this out, people were like, no way, Sam. And that's a mullet. Mullets made its way back, but it was not the mullet per se, achy breaky, short and then long, that it broke your heart. No, not that mullet. I refer to it more as, if you recall, for those of you that follow us, I refer to it as a moulet. It became really soft, but then it became known as a shaglet. And it was a combination of a shag and a mullet combined together. So what was happening was you'd see a mullet would be so much more like this. But a shag, the angle face framing became very popular. Let's put that into these shags and layers. You got face framing. That became very popular. Okay. But what we started to do with the face framing, stay with me, guys, is we started to get this face framing. Welcome back, Farrah Fawcett, if you will, but it was a different Farrah Fawcett in the way the hair floated back, not so much feathered back. And then the idea behind that was the face framing. We started to cut it further back into the hairline. And when we did that and you did this, it seemed like it was shorter and then longer in the front. So the angle started to push more back closer to the hairline, which gave us this idea of a shaglet. And then when you think about these are all just natural progressions. Just what started to happen. When you think about shags, one of the other things was you had face framing, you had the idea of a shaglet under a mullet, and then you had this another animal started to show up. Interesting, Andrew, was a butterfly. Okay, now a butterfly. You know, what's a butterfly, Sam? I want you to go back to Charlie's Angels. Charlie's Angels is a great picture now in terms of what's going on. Yeah, everybody's talking about the 80s, the reinvention of the 80s, revisit of the 80s, the revival of the 80s, the revival of the 90s. Yes, that's happening, but those, look at the silhouettes. But once again, the way we're doing it is different. But the butterfly was basically, think of, what's her name in Charlie's Angels, Andrew? Jacqueline Smith. So think of Jacqueline Smith. What happened was the shape started to do this. It started to do this, but then it started to come in. I'm going to show you something today that's going to be very interesting off of a wedge and a butterfly. I'm going to show you that natural progression. But it does this. It started to sit like this, and then it had a corner, and it did this. So when they brought the hair back and they pushed it forward, it had the silhouette of a butterfly. So layers started to get longer. And that's the number one request right now is long layers. So if you think about it, the number one request right now is long layers. People are growing out their wolf, or people are starting to consider cutting their hair, layering their long hair, but they're asking for long layers. Okay. If I'm doing good so far and you're getting the story before I demo a haircut, just give me a yes in the chat box. Just give me a yes. All right. Andrew's with me. All right. So with the long layers, we started to see these shags, but then we had another haircut in there that we were really seeing a lot. You know, not everybody wanted this medium length or long hair, but people started going into Pixies. And there was something else that has started to happen, was the fact that people started to say, you know what, I want to cut my hair off. I'm going to go for a Pixie. But Pixie became more square. They became, you know, with disconnection underneath, under layer, not so much an undercut. Difference between the two. Under layer is longer than an undercut. And then you start to see the Pixie on top of it. And we were cutting the Pixie more angled one way, angled another way, angled one way. So it gave us that built-in texture, if you will. But Pixies became really popular. Then underneath these Pixies, you had what became popular was a Bixie. So the Pixies became longer, and you had this idea and this concept. We're a bob, Sam. Bobs are always around a classical shape. You had a lob. Okay, then you had a Bixie. So a bob and a Pixie became together, which was a shorter bob. And then you had this extreme layers on top. Remember, you see how layers are a common thread happening through everything. But when you think of bobs now, what I want you to think about is we moved it into a bob. We moved into a French bob, which became very soft and romantic. An Italian bob, some people would call it an Italian bob. What I feel now, the next thing you're going to see, Andrew, is a box bob. So you're going to see bobs getting more boxy, more strength to them. There's going to become this story of discipline, and you're going to start hearing about it in terms of blissman. I'm so glad you're all with me. I know I'm talking a lot, but I need you to get this before I take you into my haircut. Okay, so bobs, you know, bobs were popular. You got your lob, your French, your Italian, but you're going to start to see box bobs, something a little bit more square. We've been talking about French bobs, how French bobs are a little bit more rounded, and then you get this little cheekiness into them. That's what really makes it French. But when I think of these French bobs, what I was thinking more of something that's a little bit more chin length. I think you're going to see bobs getting much more chin length, and that's where that box bob is going to start to come in. We're not going to start to lob them so much. We're going to start to square that lob off. And once again, our thoughts, our opinions. I'm not saying it's going to happen. These are just Sam's hair fashion projections and the feelings I see happening in 23. Okay, so we're talking about the bobs. Now, with all of this, you're going to see disconnection in a lot of this. There's a hidden layering is going to happen. You're going to see that inside these haircuts. We're going to be able to, lots of hidden layers are going to, and you're going to see it there for movement, and it's going to enhance the texture. One of the biggest things that we've been revisiting this last year is texture. We're all embracing texture. You know, from 1 being straight and 10 being coils, all types of texture. We have to understand all of that. Now, texture with layering, what happened was we started letting their hair dry naturally. You're seeing the consumer move to more organic, more lived in, but not lived in created with irons, but more just kind of spot ironing or spot finishing. And the big thing that's happening, I want to make sure I write this down in regards to finish, Andrew, is hand finishing. You're going to see a lot of hand finishing starting to pop in, and you're going to see me do some of that today for you in regards to hand finishing. Now, mullets. We talked about mullets. We talked about shags. We talked about pixies. You know, if you say, well, pixies, are they still going to be around, Sam? Yeah, but they're going to get a lot more choppier. You're going to see them really chopped up on purpose with discipline. That's critical. Are we going to see any texture using texturizing techniques? I think you're going to see sporadic texturizing techniques moving forward. It's not going to be something that we're going to be focused on. And it's because of the patterns we're going to be creating, the disconnection that we're going to use that's going to give us that built-in texture. You're going to see internal. You're going to see us using, you're going to hear that a lot in 2023, internal layering, internal texture. And you're going to experience some of that today. The idea is about twisting the traditional. That's what it's all about, taking what we've done in a traditional way and just twisting it to give it a little bit more of a different flavor, a different attitude, if you will. Questions, concerns, comments, suggestions, perfect progression. Yes, I think this quest for this imperfect haircut, if you will. I know that that's kind of an oxymoron, but it's about the way that we're approaching things. We're going to approach them with much more discipline. But it's like that lived-in finish. People go, oh, that's easy to do. It's the most difficult thing to get. It's almost like a learning process and learning how to get that lived-in finish. What's the same thing when we're going in cutting hair? There's discipline to it, but how are we creating that? Notice my sectioning. So I'm going to take this here. What I want you to do is get a screenshot of that. I'm going to get out of the way. I know it's got a lot of words all over it, but get a screenshot of that, Andrew. Let them get a screenshot of that. And then I'm going to go right into the process of what I'm going to do today. I'm going to give you the why behind it. I gave you a photo in the descriptor that was a short one, but what I'm going to do is something medium length. Why do I want to do medium length haircut for you? Because I think that's going to be one of the biggest requests that you're going to happen to see is medium length. Please make it easy to me. Okay, Mara, I will do my best. I want you to make sure you ask questions and take some photographs. I love these looks. Yes, I love all of these looks, but now everything is a natural progression. Now, when I say the phrase natural progression to you, is things progress in a natural way. Let me give you an example. For so long, we've been parting everything in the center. Everything's been parted in the center. The next natural progression for things to move from talking about parts is going to be a side part. So you're going to see a lot of side parts starting to happen. And I'm going to talk to you about fringes in regards to fringes and what's happening with fringes. I want you to notice how I'm taking my time here. I'm taking this triangular section that I have isolated. I'm taking it out. I'm actually doing a little bit of a barrel curl set on this. What I'm doing is I'm going to find myself prepping the hair a little bit more when I start to cut. So this is my section here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to draw this out for you so you can see it. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to find myself using more product while I'm cutting this next season, more so than I've ever done before. Usually I'll place my product in after the haircut. I'm going to place practically everything in prior to cutting. And the reason being is because I want to work with that natural movement, the natural texture. I believe personally, that's the big thing that you're going to be seeing. A lot of people are talking about geometrics, but I think the geometrics, you're going to see them. Yet at the same time, those geometrics have internal layering that they're going to be able to be diffused. Interesting, isn't it? Okay, here we go. What I've done first is I've taken a triangle section. So let's just put this triangle section in, okay, from the corner of the eye. What I want to do is I've discovered what I've been doing is I've been isolating triangle sections in most of my haircuts now, so that what I can do is I can revisit that at the end and say, which side do you part it, left or right? That's when I'll visit that whole concept of side parting versus a middle part. And I'll go into depth about that when I go in and I start cutting. This cut is going to be very simple. It's a simple discipline in terms of the process of how I'm cutting this. And you'll see why in terms of when we start to cut. So what I've done first is I've isolated that triangle section. Once I have that triangle section, I'm going to take this, instead of us going back to our side area where I take it almost to that corner back, I'm going to move it forward for this particular shape. At Sam V and the brand, we believe that our side area is all the way past that ear, incorporating this area here where we're low in density. It helps eliminate that whole process of holes in layered haircuts or bobs. Today, though, what I'm going to do is go from that high point just behind the ear. So I'm not going to go over the ear, but I'm going to go from that high point just behind the ear. Right there, that's where I want to go to. Okay? And I'm going to do that all the way on both sides. You're going to find my sectioning on this, in this particular case, is going to be pretty symmetrical in regards to my sectioning. I'm giving this to you all the way around here. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm going to go work on my right side. This is my strength. The section I'm going to take now, Oche, looking here, somewhat of an anime style, but I can't find a good Nisa, that is tough to do. I understand where you're coming from. I'm here for the side parts coming back. Yes, yes. Side parts are coming back, and they're coming back in a big way. So everyone be prepared for that. So Sam, when you say side parts, what are you talking about? I'm talking about fringes. Fringes are still going to be popular. But when moving to the side, you're going to start to see side saddle fringes. I'll give you a visual on that. All right, I'm going to start on my right side now. Watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take a diagonal back section. So see this diagonal back section I'm taking, okay? I'm going to isolate as I work. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to be working with a lot of low graduation. I'm not going to be working vertical or doing a lot of layering. Remember, I want longer layers now. So I'm going to make this a little bit more medium shape. What I want to create is something that goes diagonal back and then diagonal back in. So think of a wedge. That's exactly what I'm going to cut, but I'm going to use that system to cut it, but I'm going to add length to it. Then watch what I'll do internally to this to give it that internal layering. Okay, so here's the key thing. I'm going to be really talking about a lot of discipline on this. I'm going to give you a 3/4 view. I'll give you actually a side view of this, Andrew, okay, because I want you to see how I'm going to, number one, over direct this. I want you to imagine this, okay? Here is a vertical line where I section that, and then right where I section that, take a horizontal line there, okay, and you'll see that. Now, in between these two here, what I want you to get is I want you to see that is a diagonal line right there. That's going to be my combing angle. So my combing angle is going to be diagonal forward here. So I'm going to over direct. Now, I want you to see this because what I'm talking about here that I want everybody to get, it's the comb that creates the majority of the issue. Okay, it's where you comb that hair to. So one time you might be combing it here to the angle of the comb. The next time you're combing it here. See how you change the grain? And the next time you're combing it here. What I want you to remember is always visualize wherever you're parting that vertical line to your section, and at the top of your section, a horizontal line. Now visualize that diagonal 45, and that's going to keep you consistent in terms of angle your comb and now follow through with a consistent grain. If this made sense, give me a yes. And here's why, Sam, this is so important. It's important because of the fact, the way that I'm going to layer this. I'm going to use a low amount of graduation. I'm barely going to elevate this. Hi, Jennifer, T-Spall Huntsville. Good to see you, Jennifer. Okay, now watch what I'm going to do. Remember, there's that horizontal 90, a vertical 90. I visualize that 45. Place your comb there if you want, and now comb forward. I'm going to place my hand where I want to create this line. Now look at the line I'm cutting. Let's use a white comb on dark hair so I can see that line. This line, to make it easy for me, Nisa, what I'm going to do is make this section that same angle. So that way I mirror that. And now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to come through and I'm going to cut a solid line. I'm going to keep everything solid for you. You've noticed lately I've been scanning a lot. Now that's my first angle. Now notice when I over directed this, that's going to give me just a small amount of graduation here because I did not cut it down in its natural falling position. I'm going to take my next section. Here's that front area that I'm working with. I'm going to take my next slice. Now I'm going to keep my slices very consistent. Notice how much discipline I'm going to use on this. So let's go here Look at on the left side, what I've done, although I'm cutting the right side, I want you to see what I'm doing here. Okay. I'm going to take, let's use blue. This is my sectioning. Okay. That's my sectioning. That's my sectioning. That's that angle that I'm going to cut. So I'm going to cut this to the lip. Now, if this is 90, let's look at this again, guys. Come on, stay with me. Stay with me. Okay. Here's that first section. Here's that vertical line to it. So my 45 would be right here. So now the grain of the hair is all going to stay the same. So watch what I mean. That grain is here. So here's my sectioning. Look at this grain. I'm going to try and keep it all the same. See how my grain is all the same? So now watch in red. This would be a mistake. If I took this here, combed it one time this way, and the next time combed it like this. Combed it like this. Combed it like this. Can you see I'm taking it out of its grain now and not keeping it in its grain? Okay, I want you to zoom in. If you can't see that, just zoom in. All right, so that's important. Now let's talk about that. So we've talked about our over direction. Now let's talk about our elevation. Each section I take, I'm going to elevate this. So I want you to watch how I'm going to use my fingers to stay consistent in my elevation. So now, first of all, watch my comb work with this. And if you put your comb to this section and you do this, keeping that line, can you see I've kept that grain all the same? Now, I'm not going to do this. Comb it here once. Look at the grain now. The next time I go to pick it up, I'm going to comb it here. Look at the grain. See how I'm adjusting the grain. That's critical, guys. Now, watch this. Watch how I'm going to stay in control with this. Rather than taking this as a sheet of paper and pulling it up like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to subdivide this vertically. So I subdivide that in half. There's my 90. Here's my 90. There's my 45. Now I just over direct and I elevate. And now I go in and I cut. Now I'm going to give you a straight on shot of my elevation. Watch my elevation here. Okay. And you see how by subdividing it, it gave me a guide from one point to another. Here again, watch my over direction. I'm here. My comb is there. Look at my elevation. See my elevation. And look how I stabilize my fingers to stabilize that elevation. Okay. Working my way back. Okay. Now my next section. Now this is what I'm talking about. I really believe that we're going to move back into discipline. And discipline now, but watch how I'll utilize the concepts of what we've known in the past is our example of texturizing. Watch how I'll still use that. Okay, vertical, watch me subdivide this. Now watch. When I come back in, I'm going to move this out of the way. It's the most important right now you see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to fold this. You know the why behind why section that way. Excellent. Now watch. Vertical, straight up and down. Rather than taking this whole section at once, okay, let's add some over direction to it. This is going to force me to over direct and force me to see a guide from beginning to end. Now watch, see the over direction? Now watch. Look how I've got a guide at that point, and then I've got a guide back here. So now it's just a matter of me connecting the dots. So look how I've stabilized my elevation. Now watch. Why release this section? You've elevated it and you've got the grain. Place your comb in angle to that section. Boom. And you comb. See how I'm staying consistent? How I'm not letting that section down and playing a tickle game and doing this. Okay. Now watch. As I'm doing this, this is building that graduation that I want there. There's a movie back in the 80s. I can't think of the movie, Andrew. Maybe you can Google it. The actress, her name was Renee Russo. And it was a movie back in the 80s. It was a kind of a spy movie, I think, Andrew. I can't remember what it was. But her hair was something like this. And it's very kind of, it's got that wedge effect to it, but it's more medium. It's a little bit more romantic, if you will. Okay. Once again, here's that sectioning. You can just start to see my angle. I'll give you a profile again. Watch how I'll subdivide that vertically. Okay. Now look at how I set myself up. There's my comb. Okay. And I'm moving diagonally forward. Here's my elevation. Watch me set my elevation up with my hand. Look at my hand. Okay. That way I'm staying consistent. There's nothing worse than elevating here, next section way up here, next section you're here. You're inconsistent with your elevation. When we cut like this, much more with a low type of graduation, Andrew, it's so important that we stay consistent. If you don't stay consistent, we're going to have issues. That's critical. Okay. Notice how I'm going to move here. Notice how I'll continue look at my sectioning as I moved up the head. It stayed the same. And I like using the clip just a section. Okay, instead of me using the comb, I'll use a clip. Questions? Concerns, Andrew? Okay, give you a profile view, straight up and down. Any questions, concerns? What's up, Angelise from California, my friend? How are you? Okay, diagonal. Look at my consistency. Look at that. See, I'm combing. I got to tell you, look at that. See, I'm there. That's what I want there. That 45. So see this grain in a 45. Not one piece of hair combed here the next time and one over here. Keep it the same. Now watch. Okay, I did let go of that section. I encourage you to keep the section in your hand until you're ready to move on, and then move on. Here we go. I'm ready to move on. My
Sammy,
last
was
section.
it Thomas Crown Affair?
Yes. Thank you, Andrew. That's perfect. If you can bring her up. Yeah, take a look at this. Okay. It has a little bit, this one's going to have a little bit more of like at the bottom left-hand corner over here. Looks like it's closer to it. But thank you, Andrew. Thomas Crown Affair was the name of the movie. But watch how I'm going to make this a little bit more extreme in terms of how this weight sits. Once again, guys, you notice how much discipline I'm using. If you followed Sam, you've seen us for a while, you know I'm into compressed cutting. But I really believe that we're going to have this idea, this concept of building the shape in and then going in and just kind of like simply doing what we used to do, busting it up on purpose for a reason, meaning that I want to enhance the texture or enhance the movement. Okay, now take a look at the line. I'm going to put it in an under position so you can see how it's almost got this kind of angle that does this. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, now let's move to the back. Line of Fire movie. No, Jennifer, it was Thomas Crown Affair. Andrew got it. All right, now we're going to move to the back. Now watch what I'm going to move to the what I'm going to do when I move to the back. If you want to, you could cut your length here first. Okay. I'm going to cut my length afterwards. All right. You'll see in terms of knocking, there's going to be a good big corner we're going to create. So let's go to the back view and take a look at the back view, what I'm going to do. Okay. I've got this divided in half. Okay. What we just did was our angles were doing this. Okay. We were going to the back this way. Okay. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that in and I'm going to go diagonal 45, moving more to center back. So I'm cutting this angle here. Watch this, Andrew. I'm cutting this angle here, and then I'm going to cut this angle towards that center back. So can you see? Here comes that kind of butterfly effect, if you will, but not quite. This is more medium length. Don't panic. Okay. To there. That's the positions of my fingers. So I did this. Now I'm going to turn and go to the back. So now watch here in the back section. Okay. This is cut. Watch how I'll go diagonal to the back on my first section, and I'm going to cut a straight line. Meaning I'm not going to do what I might do in something that's shorter like a wedge, follow the shape of the head. So I'm not going to do that in this particular case. So I'm going to go here. Okay, now watch how I'm going to come through. I'm going to use that point as my guide, and I'm going to work to the center. So this is where I left off. Watch how I'll continue the 45. Look at the angle that I have. Look how I over direct, but look at the angle I'm cutting. So see now, this is center back right here. Let me show you center back so you get a good perspective. Okay. Here's center back. Okay. Now, friends, I want you to send this out to friends. Get them on here watching with us. Okay. Now, watch me place the comb. Now, watch me comb directly to the way I have the place comb. The comb placed. Okay. Now, watch me cut to that. All I'm going to do is just cut to that line. Notice how I've not released it. Look at the comb, white comb. Take the place of that and cut to that. Okay, now I'm going to start to elevate. I'm working with a 7-inch dry cutting shear on wet hair. Yes, on wet hair. Okay, meant for dry hair, but I sometimes will shift and use it for wet hair. Why? Because I'm working with such a wide space from one point A to point B. And with a longer shear, it allows me to get there a little bit easier rather than a lot of little snips. Staying consistent with my sectioning, bringing that sectioning back up. Now I'll give you a 3/4 view. Look at the angle. Look at me over direct. See how I just keep that grain the same? And notice how I'll comb once, placing my hand there for that elevation, right to that section, place the shear in, letting my thumb do the work. I'm not doing this. Nip, 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 nip. Coming in, opening, closing, working my way across. Now, watch how when you look at the back of this, you look at the back, look how that has, I'm going to give you a view of this. Look how that has turned in. See now how that's turned in? That's what I'm looking for. Now, what it's going to give me is it's going to give me a huge point at that center, which is not going to bother me whatsoever. You'll see how I come back in and I'll square that off. Back again, opposite side. Now in the fringe area, when I come in the fringe area, I'm going to cut a side fringe with a side part. That's why I have that triangle section marked off. I have it pre-isolated. I discovered by going in and isolating that triangle and cutting those fringes afterwards, it enables me to place that part where they want it. Sometimes when you cut from a side part, you have at the end, you're explaining to a client why one side up on top might be shorter or longer than the other. And the reason being is just because it's on a side part, you have more hair on one side and less hair on the opposite side. Okay. All right. Hi, Mama. I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you restate it? Yes. Where is she? Do we go higher when we take a new set? Yes, Mara. What I'm doing is I'm slightly elevating just higher, but really what I would prefer, if you want, stay consistent with your elevation and keep it the same. Now, remember this. Let's talk about that. Great question you're asking. If I take each section, I elevate, 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 the more expansion I'm going to get within my graduation. So the less expansion you want, just slightly elevate and then stabilize your elevation and keep everything to that point. If you find you want a lot more expansion, then continue to elevate each section, but be consistent with the amount of elevation you give each section. That's important. So I want you to understand in this particular case, I'm reaching to a certain point, I'm stabilizing it, and that's because I choose to build weight at that point. Watch where I'm at. There's my comb. Notice I'm working with the fine teeth of the comb when I'm doing this because I'm graduating the hair. Gives me a little bit more tension and gives me a little bit more snapback. Now look at my elevation. Now see, watch how I keep my hand at that point. See my fingers? That stabilized my elevation so that I'm not releasing it, so that now I just comb to that spot and I'm there. I comb to that spot. Now remember, the elevation, it works its way down because of the degree of the angle that we're cutting with. Okay, hope that makes sense. Hi, Pretty. Hello, Pretty. Hope you're doing well. Okay, now imagine that. There's your vertical 90. Place a horizontal 90 here on top. Now 45, there's my over direction point. My grain is set right there. See how I did that? So use your comb so that you're able to stay consistent. And then once again, this is not easy to do, cutting this all with that level of graduation being really low. Okay, now watch this. Just watch this as I'm just start to work this. Okay, now watch. I'm going to give it a little spin. Look at the shape. See that? That's what I'm talking about. That almost has that butterfly shape. But wait till I do that fringe. Now let me just give her a spin. Look what's happening. Now look at the back. See how that comes into that back? I mean, this is something I really believe you're going to see now. Nothing says you can't shag this on top of this. Okay, you most certainly can. And remember, I have yet to take off my corner. So it gives me that nice built-up weight, and I have yet to put my fringe in there. Okay, are you with me so far? Just give me a yes if you are. Just give me a yes. Hi, Sonia. Haven't seen you in a while. Sonia, nice to see that you're on with us today. And remember, all this stuff down here, I'm going to come back in after I want, take my length where I want. But you can see, especially from that front, I just love that silhouette from that front view in terms of how that looks. That's a great silhouette that I really believe you're going to start to see. So pay attention as we go to the opposite side. Let's go to the opposite side. Andrew, how are we doing, buddy?
Doing great, Sammy. Rocking and rolling.
All right, brother. All right, opposite side. Now, here's the tough part for me. I don't know if it is for you. Maybe you have a way. If you have a comment or something that you want to share, please remember at Sam Villa, we're not here to dictate, to say things have to be done this way. This happens to be, as I said, the projections. That's our feeling in terms of what we feel is happening. Okay, I know on this side, I use that lip area as my guide, but here's what I'm going to suggest I'm going to do. I'm going to go back, take a diagonal section on this. Okay, I'm going to re-isolate this side. Now I'm going to move this 45 and get a feel of where I was. Look, I'm using the comb. Now, all I have to do is match this to that opposite side. So see how I just turned and flipped my comb over? That's going to give me a visual of this angle. Now I've got the visual of that angle here. Now release the comb. Notice my fingers are right on that. And now I go my 45. Boom. This is where I need to be. So excuse me, Andrew, while I walk past the camera, walk to the side, place myself in a position so that they can see this. And let's stabilize. Okay, here to there. That's where I was. I trust it and I cut it. Okay, let's move the comb out of the way. Comb's in my way. Hit it in the pocket of your thumb and index finger. Go this direction. Now that comb is never in your way. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I find the tip of my shear, Andrew, it hits the tip of the comb, the spine of the comb. Now, let's come in and let's just get a piece here of where we're at and see how we did. Okay, I'm just slightly a little bit longer. So I'm going to come back in. So see how by just angling that comb, it gave me a really good measurement, visual measurement of where I should be. I'm very, very close. I trust it. And I'm going to come back in and take off what I feel I need to take off. If there's anything that's difficult, Andrew, that I have an issue, I'm not going to claim to be perfect, my friends. It's connecting one side to the opposite side. Okay, it's just very difficult no matter what you do. But measuring it, doing some kind of visual measurement like that, especially in front of your guests, really builds confidence in terms of them seeing that you're taking the time to take a proper measurement. I'm not one much, Andrew, for doing this. You know, I'd rather use my comb or the angle of the comb to determine that. Okay, here we go. Now watch again. I subdivide vertically, straight up and down, set my comb into that angle, comb through, and that's where I belong. Okay, once again, use your fingers to establish your elevation if you want. Coming through now. Notice how I place my comb in. Look at that comb stay the same. Notice how the hand comes right behind it. And notice how I'm pushing the comb into my fingers. So I push the comb so that that stabilizes. See that? How I'm pushing? That stabilizes my combing and keeps it consistent. That if there's any tool, Andrew, that we believe makes some mistakes, it's the comb. It's your comb that makes some mistakes. Why, Sam? Because where you're standing, your comb will always release itself to the center of the body. So if my center of my body is here, watch what happens. See how I just swung that up a little bit more? Okay, so you got to remember, where is your body? Some people will say, center your body to section. Great, I'm centered. I'm happy with that. Okay, now watch. I'll shift my body without shifting my hand to make sure that my arm is nice and straight here. So what's really important is be aware of what I'm trying to say is be aware where your body is when you pick up a particular section. And the reason, once again, is you will comb that. The comb will release itself and float to the center of your body, therefore affecting the combing or the grain, as we've been talking about, the grain of the section in terms of how you're combing it. Sam, can you clarify grain? What I mean is this hair, I'll give you a really good profile view of this. Okay. What I'm saying is that this hair is all the same grain. Watch this. I comb it this way to cut. Now, if I'm going to cut that section again, I did not look at the angle of the comb. I didn't do this. Now look at the grain shift. Now that grain just shifted higher. Does that make sense? So important that you get it. Give me a yes if you got it. Okay. Hey, Jorge Perez. How are you, my friend? Great to see that you're on board with us. Great class yesterday. If you have not caught Jorge Perez, one of our great ambassadors, Samvia ambassadors, he did a class yesterday. Make sure when you see he's got a class coming up, check him out. He does some beautiful, beautiful work. Also, he's bilingual. We have classes in Spanish for those of you that are wanting some classes in Spanish. Jorge and Marissa are working with giving you those classes in Spanish. Great to see you, my friend. So glad you're on board and with us today. Okay, so watch. See that angle? See that grain? All the same. And once again, I'm stabilizing with my pinky underneath, stabilizing my degree of elevation. Now we come to the back. Now all I need to do in the back is I'm going to connect these two dots. Okay, so I connect this with that center. Once I've got this angle stabilized and in, then I'm going to come back and knock off my corner. So here we go with the section, diagonal back. Okay, let's eliminate what we don't need. All right, up and away. And now take Look how I sliced that just to get a piece of that. Now connect these two dots together. There's one here. There's one there. That sets up my angle and cut it. Okay, watch again how I'm going to maintain that angle. Look, I'm picking up that piece. That piece comes from that side. That's what the ending point. Now here I've connected it to that point that I've cut there. Okay, now my sectioning, keep it consistent. What do you mean, Sam? Well, I'm not taking one section that's this tiny and one section that's this big. Okay, I want to keep those sections consistent. So if I start out this big, then you keep them that consistent. Why? And when you're done and you dry it, your graduation underneath could look chunky if we're not careful in terms of our consistency. Now watch what I'll do. I'm going to subdivide that vertically. It's such a wide line for me to cut, but watch me place that comb in diagonal. One sweep and I'm there. What I want you to stop doing is overcombing, overcombing, overcombing. When we tend to overcomb, you would tend to adjust the grain. So the less you comb, the better, especially when you're working with such discipline. Get there, trust it, cut it, and move yourself on. You're going to be fine doing it that way.
Sammy, we have 2 questions from Colleen and Najer Holman.
Yep.
Wondering if, number 1, could you cut it with a razor? And number 2, could you cut it dry? So could you cut it with a razor and could you cut it dry?
All right. If I'm going to cut it dry cutting is a visual exercise. All right. So since I'm choosing, Andrew, to cut this very precise and keep it very blunt, I wanted to cut it wet. Cutting wet gives me a lot more control. Now, if I had really good density, a lot of hair, and I felt I needed that to be a little bit more airier, then I would probably cut it dry and I'd be scanning into it. So I adjust that perimeter edge so it's not so blocked off in this particular case. So remember, my friends, dry cutting is a visual exercise for you to see the edge. So anytime I want to see the end result of a cutting edge as I'm cutting, I'll cut it dry. Anytime want something wet, I'll go in. Anytime I want something very precise and I want to keep it really disciplined, I'll go in and cut wet. Could you do this with a razor? Of course you could do this with a razor. What determines if you do it with a razor? It's going to depend upon the type of fabric that you're working with. Ask yourself, does the fabric warrant you using the tool that you're using, the tool of choice? So the fabric, let the fabric tell you. What do you mean, Sam? Well, if I'm doing this on a 10 coily hair, then what I got to be aware of, I got low graduation here. That is going to really pop up. Plus, I kept it very blunt. If that's the end result you want, then great. But if you want something that has a little bit more of a deconstructed look, a softer edge, a little bit more of a broken edge, then that's when I'll go back in and I'll cut more dry. So just simply put, remember, dry cutting is a visual exercise for you, the hairdresser, based upon the visual edge that you desire to see. So by cutting dry, you can immediately see the edge. Okay. Does that help out? I hope that helps out who was asking the question, Andrew. Okay. Now notice how I'm taking some of that opposite side and I'm shifting it over. I shift it over, so anything that overlaps, I'm going to take and bring it into this edge that I created on her left side. Okay. Notice how I haven't let go of that section. It enabled me to keep that elevation the same. Let me just turn her towards me. Okay, let's get this section out. And now I'm visually just going to check my balance. Okay, and now watch. In the back, you're going to see how this came out in terms of that. Okay, watch the back. Okay, so see how I've got these edges coming in? That's what I'm looking for. Now, let me get her a little bit higher and see if we can see. Yeah, you got a little bit of a shadow right here, Andrew. But see that point? It's that point right there that I want to take off. That's what I want to do, is take that point off. So if you take this, you can see there's that point there. So this point, I'm just going to slightly just take that point off. If you can see the silhouette of the shape, just give me a yes. Just type yes in the chat box. Okay. All right. Next thing. Then the last thing all I got to do is I just got to go in there and I just got to do my fringe area. So watch me bring this down. Okay. Now watch me take this corner. See that corner right there? That corner is what I am going to take. I'm going to grab a piece of white paper, Andrew. I want them to see this. All right. So if I place this underneath here and I just comb this, you can see this corner right here. Let me square this to you. Okay, see that corner? That corner now is what I want to take off. Now, Sam, could I leave that corner if I wanted to? Of course you could. You can leave it. It's not a problem. But the idea here is you want to just examine what's the shoulders like. What is it that you want to do? You know, you determine what you want to do on that. I'm going to go square across from one side of the corner to the opposite corner. And to me, look at how that now looks just by simply taking that corner off. Okay. Yeah, Shirley, I have no idea what this cut is coming in late. No problem, Shirley. You're fine. I'm approaching this idea of a wedge comp set, but if you look at the shape of this, when you look at this now, you know, you see how you're getting that. Let me just square her to you. You see how you're getting that kind of like that whole idea of it doing this, where it's cut back and it comes in. So take a look up here. This is what we did, Shirley. Okay, so it's basically built off of a wedge, but the idea is I want a little bit more kind of weight to this when I go through and I'm working with it. So I'm just coming through, checking. Let's get this side. Now, I'm not going to let this water play games with me, okay, because as you look at it, let's get her set straight up. Andrew. Boy, is she having problems today. There we go. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right, that's that side I cut now. Here's this other side. This side is wet, so it may seem a little bit heavier, but it has some moisture to it. So here's the learning lesson here. Don't go in and say, oh, when you're done with one side and the other side, remember the other side, it could look longer, but there's water to it. So that's not what's happening here. I like where I'm at in terms of the balance. I'm very happy with that. All right, here we go, fringe. Now, fringe. This is the last part of this particular haircut. I want this fringe. This season, you're going to start to see this. These fringes are going to start to move over, and they're going to start to get really high. They're going to start to do what we call a side saddle fringe. It's just something that's going to happen. Here's an example of something like that. You can see that. But basically, these types of fringes right here, I really feel. When I think about fringes, I think about curtain fringe. That's from a middle part. A bottleneck is the shape of a bottle. Take a look at a bottle. You're seeing a lot of that right now, bottleneck fringes. They happen from a middle part. And the natural progression is you're going to have everybody moving to a side part. So side parts are going to happen, but they're going to pop up. Think of mall bangs. How many of you, I just panicked when I said that. Think of mall bangs coming back, but more romantic, more on the side. Not so much at you, if you will. Any comments on that? Vara, I'm glad to, Vara, I hope I pronounced that right. Sorry, very knowledgeable session. Thank you for that. Thank you, Pretty. Appreciate that. All right, now let's go into this fringe. I know I want this to do this, but first thing we need to be aware of, for fringes to move to a side, they need to have length. So this needs to have length. So watch what I'm going to do. All I'm going to do is build this into that angle that I just cut on this side. But I'm not going to build it into the other side. So she said she wears her hair on a fringe. So now this is where I pay attention. You see, by working from a middle part, I say in that triangle, it gave me the same amount of density on both sides. Had I gone on a low left side part, this side would not have as much density, and this side would have a lot more density to it in terms of the weight. So just a great way to approach these things. Cut your triangle fringes, cut them last. Now watch what I'm going to do. See this angle? All I'm going to do now is continue this angle. So that's that angle that I had from the lip, but now it's taking it up shorter. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to come through, and I'm going to cut my line into that. Okay. See, that's where I'm looking for. That's that fringe right there. Okay. Now I come back in. Okay. Let me just sit still. Okay. I come back in, take my next section on that triangle. And notice I'm doing the same thing. I'm elevating this, but watch what I'm going to do to layer this out. Okay, here. Okay, watch here. Okay, forward. Okay, my next section. Here. And then when you look at this, that fringe, it sits heavy. So what I need to do, the next thing I need to do is lighten that up. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to lighten up this. Remember that whole interior story in the beginning where I talked about natural fashion productions, this whole concept of internal layering. And I want my layering more offset this season. You know, I want it to have an offset feel to it this season in terms of that. Okay, can you see how that's sitting now? Okay, I think you're really going to start to see these types of shapes happening a lot more as we move into 2023 with these side fringes moving in and doing that, but really lifting up to that. Mora, how did I establish my guide for that fringe? The way that I established the guide for this fringe was that angle that I had down below, okay? This angle I had here, okay? All I did was just take that fringe and continue that angle, same into that side fringe, okay? That's all that I did. So, for example, follow me over here, okay? Just still checking my weight on that side, guys. Okay. What I did was this is the section we took on this side. You see that, Mara? All I did was continue that section inside of this fringe, and I connected it into this line that I had here. I just connected that right into that fringe. That's all I simply did. Okay. Now watch this. Okay. This is where it gets a little bit like scary. People are like, I can't believe you just did that. But watch what I'm going to do. Okay. And then I'll put some closure on this end. All right, here. I'm going to take my fringe area first. Okay. I'm going to hold all of this fringe area. Okay. And then I'm going to take a tail comb. Stay with me, guys. Okay. Now, I'm going to take this tail comb and I'm going to pretend to be a colorist. Okay. And watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold her head down like this. Now watch how deep I'm going all the way down in this section. So all I want to do is I just want to weave this section. So watch what I'm going to do. I come in, I weave it. I come down into it, down into it, and down into it. So now watch this. Look how deep that weave is. See that? I'll give it to you up close and personal, Andrew. See that? Look how deep it is. Look at 3/4. Look at from a little bit on the profile. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to take something that we've been doing and apply it to this section. Remember, so if I look at this section, look how tall it is from there. Look how deep my weave is. From there to there. My weave is not a skim. It's deep into this. Then I'm going to take this section. I'm going to stand way over here, and I'm going to cut this section. Because I want it soft, now that hair is somewhat dry, I'm going to come in and just notch into that. Once I've done that, and I'm going to come and deep point into that. So you've seen me weave before, but what I want you to notice, how I'm weaving taller into this. Now, what that did was, all that did was just give me a sense of layering in there to give me a little bit more control. So take that control out of that. Okay. You see that? Okay, let's get her straight, Andrew. There we go. All right, now watch. I'm going to go to the back. All the way to the side area now. Here's that fringe that I just did. Now watch, I'm going to take a tail comb. I like taking a tail comb. I found it a lot easier than me using my comb. Okay, so just use a tail comb. Remember, watch this. I'm not going to take this sheet of hair, Andrew, and just skim it and go horizontally across that. Watch how the tail comb comes in. I'm up at the top. I go vertically into that, and I come back up. I go down vertically into that, back up, down into that, back up, down into that, and back up. Now, when I release this weave up, look how deep I am into that. Okay, once again, look at that. See how tall that section is? Now, by simply taking this, moving to the opposite side, and now I'm going to layer the interior. So this is all I'm doing is just layering the interior. So I'm maintaining my weight. I'm maintaining it, but I'm taking out some of that weight just to give it that edge, a little bit more of a soft layer, if you will. That's all I'm doing. Okay. Now you can just start to see that response that I'm getting out of that. Okay. And then if I was to go in and blow dry this, I'd be blow drying this with my comb, We'll do a class on that one day and just blow drying straight up to get that whole idea of a side saddle fringe. Okay, now I come to my back area. Okay, my back area. Now I'm in the back. Okay, I just did the side. Now look at me take that whole thing. Okay, I take my comb. I come up, down where I want to go down. How far down do you want to go? I'm almost vertical. Let me give it to you a little bit more on the back, Andrew. Okay, and bring it back up. Okay, that sheet. I've got a couple minutes here, Andrew. I know. Okay, stay with me, guys. Don't go anywhere. Okay, down, up, vertical, down. See, I just kicked the comb. Watch me. Here's the comb. Watch how I turned it diagonal. That takes me back down another space. Back up. Now here's the hair I'm going to cut. Look how deep it is again. Okay, now I step to the other side. Just like I've been layering. This is a way that I've been layering hair a lot in the past. But what I want you to know is now I'm building weight and just establishing the layer inside. Okay. You can just start to see how that's working. Shirley, thanks for joining us. I'm glad you were here. I know, Crystal, that you got it. I'm going really deeper than I usually go, and it works. See, here's the thing. Look at the response I got out of that now, especially this side now that's getting fully dry. You can start to see it. But what I didn't lose was this wedge effect that I got here. But what I did was I lightened up the inside. So that's why I'm going in deeper this season on these little cuts that are built like this. I'm going to go in deeper when I weave. So I go in and place that texture that I want inside. This way I'll get that internal movement, that internal texture, that internal volume, if you will. Once again, watch. See how I go? Let me turn. Sorry, Andrew. I'm going to go a little bit over here. Okay, down. So where do you take it to? About the round of the head. Back up, back down. Now you can really see it. Down, back up. So look how far down that is. Okay, but look at what I'm doing. What I'm doing is by standing over here and taking this up over to here, what I'm doing is I'm cutting this layered section short to long. So when I release this, watch this. This layered section moves like this. It moves from short to long. So I don't want you to think you're taking out big chunks inside of that. It's just another great way to layer the hair so that you get the desired result you want in terms of when they say, my hair is too heavy. My hair is too heavy. This is a great way to take out that weight by weaving vertically now instead of horizontally across that section. Okay, here's my section. Okay. I don't know about you guys, but I really enjoy just figuring out different ways to do what we might already know. I really enjoy challenging myself to do things in a different way. So we've talked about trends today. So if you want to embrace these new trends, first of all, you have to embrace change. You know, that's the number one thing is embrace change. When you embrace change, you will open yourself up to kind of taking on these different approaches and taking on these shapes that might not be pleasing to your eye, but I got to tell you something. It's not about your eye. What I challenge you to do and ask you is, can you do what the client requests? Ask yourself that. I'm not trying to sell them anything. What I'm trying to do is listen to what their needs are. And then my suggestion would be, okay, give them the freshness of what their needs are and their expectation of what they're looking for. When you do that, I think you're going to be able to challenge yourself. You're going to stay on top of it in terms of what you're doing. Now, let's just back it up. Look at the shape. Okay. You can see the shape. Don't you wish you could take their head, turn it upside down? Look at the shape. Look how that just grounds itself in. You see that? Oh, let me square her, Andrew. Okay, here. Okay, now let's bring her down and look at that. Look how it just sets up like a wedge. But the idea, once again, is with this side part. I hope you guys enjoyed today, that you got something out of today. Once again, the disclaimer that I gave you, this is our opinion. These are our thoughts and these trends in terms of approaches. We're not here to dictate that this is exactly what's going to happen. We're not here to dictate to you that you need to do it this way. But I don't know about you, but I'm going to find as many ways as I can to do something that I might already know. If you got something out of this class, just type me a yes. I can't thank you guys enough for joining me. It's great for curly hair, Crystal. Awesome for curly hair, but gauge the amount of curl you have. Remember, if it's 10 coils, this would really be popping. So you just got to remember the texture of hair, but I could do it anywhere on a 5 to a 7, probably easily. When you get in more into above an 8 to 10, you got to be a little bit more careful. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Back to Andrew.